Okay, so
Hold it, one question. Do I bring in that they wanted to take away my dental license?
maybe we'll see. Let's see where the conversation takes us.
More, yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about grandmom, because grandmom to me, there's so many times in my life that it comes up that I was like, wow, grandmom would be proud of this, or
Wait,
grandmom.
let me ask you this question. Where do you want me to start with grandmom? Her life, her
No,
history?
I'm going to lead you into it.
Okay.
You just relax. We're having a conversation. Just relax. There are many times in my life where I think of her, where I see someone made a handmade dress, or there's a costume or a concept or an older person doing yoga, and I'll think of grandma. She was just this incredible spirit despite having this hard life. What was the essence of that spirit for you?
She was very optimistic. Things are always going to be better, and she was going to do her best to make them better. If I think about the early years, I remember her going to school and showing me her books and going over my work and actually helping teaching me. And this was in Philadelphia. And being so positive, always positive. Eventually, she graduated from high school, going to night school, and then she decided that she wanted to do something in design, clothing design. She was always a good sewer, and she could always make her own clothing, and just using scissors and a thimble and a needle and thread, and she would do it on the kitchen table, and something would come out. She even wanted to make clothing for me, but it didn't turn out too well. I didn't like it. But, and she also home taught me, very successfully, because I was way ahead of, when I did go formally to public schools, I was way ahead of everyone.
So, people, sometimes you can trace generation after generation after generation of musicians, and you see that there's got to be something innately, something that's inherited. Is there a creativity, do you think?
I think so. Again, my mother schooled me. When I would make a special project, you're always doing projects when you're a child going to public school, elementary school especially. And she would guide me in the presentations. The letters had to be just so carefully done to a fraction of an inch that they all had to line up right. What do you call those stencils? I was not allowed to use a stencil. You couldn't use a stencil. I had to print out carefully. I had to make little blocks, very fine blocks of where the letters are going to be, and put them on. And then for with artwork, I had to be very careful. Nothing could be smudged. Perfection was her name. But she made it interesting for me. I liked it. And I especially liked the attention that I got from my classmates and from the teachers on the projects that she encouraged me and helped me do.
And you, in turn, decided when it was time for your children to do projects, what happened?
There was only one way to do it, and that's the way we were going to do it. Yes, I remember my mother's teaching, and I just passed it on to my children.
So the one thing that really stands out to me, Grandma had a saying when it came to creating anything: you can't ruin it. What was that saying that she had, and what did it mean?
Well, it's that when you're being creative, it's a form of art, and it's your expression. And this is how you saw the project. That this is the representation of it, of the presentation had your creativity in it. And it was a form of art, so you couldn't ruin it. And that was my motto. I got that from my mother.
Even if you're doing some kind of project for school, or
Especially if you're doing a project for school, because multiple, my mother would say, multiple eyes will see this. And of course, in my imagination, I saw someone with about 24 eyes looking at it like a space creature. My mother would say to me, "Get serious. I have more to do than this." But she helped me.
so you think that had a profound effect?
Oh yeah, it had an effect on me. I wanted to please her. And that's good. That's good.
Even through her older years, as she aged, she was still a force
Uh,
of energy. And
oh, of energy. Yes, a lot of energy. A lot of energy. But,
just talk about some of the things that she did, even when she, was.
well, she didn't paint too much when I was a child. Once in a while she'd, paint a little picture. But she didn't spend a lot of time on it. She had, first she was very busy. I didn't mention this. When we lived in Strawberry Mansion in Philadelphia, that's where we moved when my father got out of the Marine Corps. He got a job in the post office. She was going to school, but after she finished school, she became very active in community events. And when we moved to Mayfair, she became a Girl Scout leader, and had a very nice troop of girls. Too old for me, but very nice girls, and always very friendly to me. And she became the president of the Sisterhood of the Jewish Community Center in the area we lived. And during the war...
But she managed to do all this by always being... Wasn't she very sweet and kind? Or is that not... Is that just the granddaughter's perception?
She was fair to people. She would help anybody. But if people would try to take advantage of her, she wouldn't speak to them after that. She felt that they were abusing the friendship, and there were people who did.
Because she was very giving.
She was giving. She was a giving person. How she was to you, she was to a lot of people. If you remember what she did at that condominium that she lived in, she was chairperson of about 5 different committees. Entertainment, decoration,
Was it her energy? It was her energy?
She had a lot of energy, and she liked people.
Is that where you think you get it from?
The energy, probably. Although my father had a lot of energy, but it was never positively directed. It was always getting even.
But your mother was a whirlwind.
Yeah. Oh, my mother had a lot of energy. That's a gift. The energy is a gift. If you have it, it's how your metabolism works and how your brain works. Yeah, I think I inherited a lot of that from my mother.
She was not a good cook, though, right?
She could be. But after the war started, she became emancipated. It was not uncommon now for women to be working. Again, my father's experience was with blue-collar workers, men who had a skin education, physical men. They didn't let their wives work. But the war changed everything, and after the war, things remained changed. Women were not allowed to work. Now, they could if they were school teachers, but most of the school teachers were unmarried. They could if they were nurses. Again, they could. There were some women who worked in stores, apparel stores.
But for her, the difference was that has always been a positive person.
Very positive, very positive. And
is she the one that encouraged you to go to Central High?
No. No, it was my principal.
What happened?
Well, in Central High started in ninth grade. My problem was that Central High had a connotation of being filled with very brainy, weak, physically weak boys. And they had the fight song for Central High. Everybody would sing Central High, woo woo, knit one, pearl two. That was their fight song that we sang. So the principal of my school, I went to a junior high, and he had gone to Central High, and he had a PhD in education. And we were quite a distance from Central High. It took an hour by public transportation, if you were close. It was, and by public transportation, it was 3 separate. You took a bus, you took a trolley, and then you took another trolley.
That's what you had to do?
Yeah, it was
All
about an
4
hour.
years?
I was only there 3. It was a 4-year school. It started in ninth grade. I didn't go in ninth grade.
You did that for 3 years, though.
I could have done it for 4. Everybody wanted me to, my teachers said, go to Central. I mean, you belong in Central. Because I got all A's. I mean, I had no problems in junior high. I mean, it was all A's. I mean, it's like, I used to read a book in the class. I mean, there was nothing that, it was just, you know, it was good, it's a good subject I liked. I even liked Latin then, so, because you didn't have to speak it, you know. Excuse me. But anyway, what happened, this is a little story. I had a dog then. Well, my sister and I had this little dog. It was a little terrier. It was a female. She weighed about 12 pounds, 14 pounds. Great little dog. And I was out walking, and I met two of the kids in the neighborhood who went to North Catholic High. They were a little older than I was. And as we were talking, this is 1945. This is right after the war. And one of our neighbors had been able to procure a brand new car, 1946. This was in like September, October 45, 1946. Post-war car, although it was a pre-war design. And he owned a bar, and he frequently came home. He was an Irish guy, Mr. Duffy. And he came home drunk, usually. And, you know, it was about 9 o'clock. And he left the engine on and the lights on to the car. And we said, oh, we should turn off the lights and get the keys. Left the keys in the ignition of Mr. Duffy's car. So we went to the car, and my 2 friends, they were about a year and a half older than I, but we were in the same grade. They said, big thing was, smell the car. This, my God, it's great, look at it, great. And one of them said, let's take it around the block. Brody, take the dog home, come back. We're going to take it around the clock. Go to the car. Just like stealing the car. Take the car. We're going to take it. Just go around the block. I'm not going to do it. It's like, chicken. That's the trouble with you, Brody. Chicken. Okay, I went home. Didn't see anything to anybody. So the next day I didn't see, it was Bobby Gosner, and the other was Bernie somebody. I don't remember his name. I didn't like Bernie. Bobby I liked. I'm just telling you. So, where are they? Oh, they're in Shawcross. What? Shawcross was a reformatory. No trial. Picked up. Stole a car. Mr. Duffy's car. Dan Duffy. Dan Duffy's car. Everybody knew Dan Duffy, especially the police. They liked him. Because, you know, have a drink, boys. And they went right to Shawcross. And I was a reformatory for boys, and they stayed in there until they were old enough, and the only reason they would get out, it was a real big deal to steal a car. They weren't going to steal it, they were going to bring it home. They took it on Roosevelt Boulevard. They went from our street down another street to another street and then drove on Roosevelt Boulevard about 70 miles an hour. So at least that's what the police say. I never saw them again. They came out of Shallcross when they're at 18, and the only reason they let them out is if they're going to service. And they went to service. And there was no war on at the time, but there was a war very soon after.
So what did that moment mean to you?
That I can't keep going with these guys. I'm going to get into trouble. These guys are crazy, stupid. What is the matter with them? So I went to about Monday, the following week, I went to school. I was in 9th grade. Central started in 9th grade. Every once in a while, they let somebody in the 10th if they had good grades. And I was like maybe 3rd or 4th in my class. 3 girls were ahead of me. That's when I started to realize, boy, these girls are smart. And I went to Central in 10th grade. And that was the change. That was a real change for me.
Did you tell the story on tape about why you decided to become a dentist with Earl Gross in his car?
I don't.
Did you pay attention?
No, I didn't say it before.
I like that story.
You want it? Well,
Yeah.
no, the question. What is the question?
Because you met him at Central, right?
No, I met Earl before Central.
Before Central, okay.
But it was Earl Gross's father that it was one of the inspirations for me. The other inspiration was a patient.
Let me hear the story about Earl Gross's, or just
No,
hanging out with Earl Gross. Anyway.
No.
Deal,
Let me tell you the story about. I think a big determination. Central High was a big.
What was that like, Central High? Just in a
I remember going to class.
Central High was like every city has that one school, you know. That was so even
You have to be.
today, if
You
I
have,
like talk
you
to
have to be
someone who's from
referred by your
Philadelphia,
principal or by somebody in the school
If I
that you.
talk to someone who's from Philadelphia and like I'll be like, your dad went to Central, right? You know, it's
And
like
wh-
that school.
Yeah. You didn't have to take an entrance exam to go to University of Pennsylvania if you graduated from Central High.
Can you imagine getting admitted to an Ivy League school if you just went to that high school? It's crazy.
Or any of them. I mean, and you didn't get a high school diploma. You got a Bachelor of Arts degree.
Okay, so what was the patient? Wait, who did you say influenced you?
Well, do you want me to stay with Central, or do you want me to go to?
Yeah, you can start with Central was.
All right. So I went to Central, where I thought I thought, how tough could it be? I'll read the story. I'll read the book. I'll do the problems, and I couldn't believe how these guys were speaking. I mean, their vocabulary was like some out of a book. And they also, there was a dress code at Central. You had to wear a tie, a shirt, and a tie. You didn't have to wear a jacket, although a lot of guys did wear jackets. And I didn't have a jacket, but I had 2 ties. I had a lucky tie for tests and a regular tie. And I got very nervous if there was a surprise test and I wasn't wearing my test tie. But, I was young. But anyway, my fellow students, now I had gotten nothing but A's, even in foreign language, which was Latin, at junior high school. I always got A's. Now I'm at Central. And I had algebra in junior high, 1 year of algebra, but I found out that I only had 2 months of algebra in a whole year. They were that far ahead. They were like, later I found out, they took you right up to the calculus. Then, there were very few schools did it. I think Central was the only high school in Philadelphia at that time. This was right after World War II. This is 1946 that I'm in Central High. And so I just found it was, now the subjects that in English, I mean, I was way behind in terms of grammar. They didn't even call it grammar, they called it rhetoric. I mean, it was like, and I was studying, I'd come home and I'd study, and by the time I was also working then. I was still working. I was working about because this is ninth grade. I started, that's another, you'll ask me about that. But anyway, my first term in Central, I got an A in a new subject. That was botany. I got a B in, I think it was social studies. I got a C in English. And I got a D in Latin. Because they had taken Latin in junior high, but these guys were reading Cicero, which was a great story about the Roman Empire.
So what happened to your self-confidence?
Oh, I just figured I was way behind. That's all.
And what'd you do about it?
During the summer, I prepared myself. I didn't take algebra the next term. I was going to take geometry with everybody else. I went down to a bookstore at Second and Market in Philadelphia, and I bought a book of problems, geometric problems. And I bought a slide rule. We didn't have calculators, but we had slide rules. You can actually work the slide rule to come up with mathematics to 5, 6 figures. And I was prepared for it. Now they had two honors.
Let me get this straight. So the principal didn't tell you to do this, the teachers didn't tell you to do this, your mother didn't tell you to
Oh
do
no,
this?
the teacher told me to go to Central.
No, to go to, over the summer, to catch yourself up. This was something that came from you?
Yeah, sure. Well, why wouldn't I do it?
Have you met your grandchildren?
No. Oh, no. That's not a big deal. I wasn't going to buy a new book. I could have bought these books. I mean, I wasn't going to buy a new book. I went there and bought used books. You know.
So, did you enjoy, what did the exposure to, you were in a very, very blue-collar world. What did the exposure to these kids, or when did...
Well, I had a handicap in a way, because most of the kids who went to Central came from, I would say, the neighborhood of Central High School, proximate neighborhoods. So after high school, and then I worked. By that time I had a job. I worked. I worked Wednesday afternoon and Wednesday night, Friday afternoon, Friday night, and all day Saturday.
Doing what?
Well, shoe salesman. By that time I was, pretty, that also influenced me greatly. I should tell that story and you'll fit it in anyway, all right? Well, I'm at Central High School. We'll leave Central. I eventually turned out to be pretty good, and I graduated 24th in my class out of 160 something, 170. Central in 9th grade had almost 400 students. Central in 10th grade had about 240 students. We graduated about 180 students.
Did you form some really close friendships there?
No, not really, because I was working. I didn't live in the neighborhood where most of the kids came from. I lived in Mayfair. Only 4 kids in Mayfair went to Central High.
Did you all take the bus and train and all
That's
that?
how I knew, yeah. Yeah, in fact, by the time I was a senior, I was the only one left going to Central High.
I was going to ask you something about...
Well, you asked the question about, well, did I become very friendly with them? I did become friendly with them, but I became most friendly with those who ended up at Penn with me from Central High. We felt that we had a bond. At Central, it wasn't that much of a bond. A lot of them belonged to these high school fraternities. Well, they had them. Yeah, you know them.
Were you playing sports then, though? When were you playing sports?
Just in the neighborhood, I couldn't. I worked. I worked from 12 years old on. I never stopped working. I had a lot of fortunate things happen to me, a lot of breaks. I mean, we talk about breaks. I wanted a bike. My father said, "You want a bike? Wait, you can have any bike you want. Just you're going to pay for it." Okay. So I was about 8.5. No, I was 8.5 years old. I was going to be 9 that December. I started that summer. This was still 1940. The world was changing. The Battle of Britain was ongoing. Didn't know if England was going to survive the Germans. So people were very interested. The neighborhood I lived in was Irish. They hated the English. Hated it. And in July 4th, 1941, there was a big parade down Frankfurt Avenue. And there was a whole group of men dressed in brown, wearing armbands with swastikas, because they were anti-English. And they wanted England to lose the war, because if England lost the war, Ireland would be free. So they were Nazi
Anyway, you wanted a bike.
Okay, well, I'm just telling you what life was like. So I wanted the bike, and they opened a new food fair, one of the first in the neighborhood. And the war was just about going to start. And I had a wagon, and everybody didn't have cars like today. And people would go there, and because it was one of the first supermarkets in the world, people would buy a bunch of bundles, and they didn't have cars, and they couldn't carry it home. And I had this wagon. I fitted it up so it would hold 3 big bags of grocery. And then I would wait for the people to come out, and it wasn't my idea. There were other people doing it before me, but I figured I'll do it. And we would solicit, the people will take care, and how much, whatever you want to give us.
You were a little kid, though.
In 1941, I was 9 years old. Not that small, not that little. So I was able to make about $1 on a Saturday. Some people would give you 3 cents, but I never complained. And I would be walking like 8 blocks with 3 bundles of groceries in your wagon. But money was tough then. We were just coming out of a depression. I mean, people couldn't afford cars. So I did that, and I had made enough money. But it took me about over a year, to make the money to buy a bike. And then the war came out, and they stopped making bikes. But I was able to buy a redone used bike.
How special was that bike to you?
No, not only to me, my sister, because I gave it to her. I could do anything with that bike. I remade that bike. I painted it a couple of times, changed the seat, changed the handlebars, changed the brake system. I could do anything with that bike. And I rode that bike until I was like 15 and a half and 16 years old, even when I was 16.
Let me ask you something. So when you take a look at, you see kids today, 9 years old, 8 years old, and you look back at yourself and what you were doing, are you ever marveled by,
No,
geez.
no, this upbringing. I had a very creative mother and I had a very strict father. Perfect. In retrospect.
Okay. So let's talk about again.
Wait. I wanted to tell you about this because this was really meaningful to me. Central was very helpful. Everything kind of came, just like somebody was steering me the right way after a while. I didn't want to wear my Uncle Sal's clothes anymore. My mother we never had the money to buy new clothes. So I would get Sal's clothes, 10 years older than I am. The fashion wasn't quite the same. It was changing, but not for me. So my mother belonged to this community center, Jewish community center, and she was very active there. She did things for the community center, and wasn't a Girl Scout leader yet, but she was active in the community center. And she decided when they had a rummage sale, which was open to the community, because some of the people who were most influential in the Jewish community center were some of the doctors and lawyers. And when their children, after a year or two, outgrew their suits, they weren't worn out, so they gave it to me. So my mother brought home this corduroy jacket and pants. And one Sunday, we had to wear something. It was a holiday. Jewish holiday. And I walked in, and everybody said, "Oh, here's Philip. It's Philip Gladstein, everybody. He shrunk." So I was wearing Philip Gladstein. I didn't know it was Philip Gladstein's suit. I didn't even think about it. That bothered the hell out of me. And of course, everybody in that community center, my father never went to. My father had the expression about all religions. It's a lot of mumbo jumbo. That was his. It's mumbo jumbo. Keep people in line. Keep them in line. So he never went, but my mother was going to get me there. She didn't want me to be like my father. So everybody knew this Jewish fireman. You know, Joe Brody's crazy. He's a Jewish fireman. And then he was a prize fighter. And then he was a Marine. Whew, what a crazy guy. So they felt kind of sorry for me. And my mother did a lot of work for the temple, the Jewish Community Center, because she didn't have to pay anything to be a member. So she was always doing things for them. And she said, as soon as we straighten everything out, we'll be a member. I wasn't too thrilled with that because I don't want to be a member. But anyway, one of them came to me and he said, "You know, I could use somebody to wash my windows. And I'll give you $1 a week. And if you do them twice a week, and I want you to raise the morning, in the morning, on your way to school." Because I was, you know, walking to school. And he says, "I have a couple other stores here." And he gave me the names of the men, Mr. Borse, you know, Mr. Rose. And don't even remember his name now. But anyway, so I had 4 or 5 people that I would wash their windows. So I stopped taking orders. Because orders, I only made $1, $1.50, you know, maybe. And now I'm going to make $5 a week, $6 a week. So I started doing that. Let's see, I guess it was about 1943 I was doing that. In 44, something happened that changed finances. Everything was, they had an Office of Price Administration. Nobody was allowed to raise prices during the war. Now, but as things got scarce, you couldn't keep the same price, you know, because the merchandisers would look around. They weren't manufacturing anymore, but there were things in storage that you could get, but you had to pay more for it. It was called black market, under the counter. Okay. So people started complaining that we just don't get enough, and the reason why we have all this black market is because to get merchandise, sometimes you have to pay somebody to get it, and then you can't make, okay. So in 1944, the ration board said, okay, everybody can raise their prices 4%. Now, one of my, I'll call him customers, Harry Rose, he was about, I'm going to picture this man, he was about 5'7". He weighed about 220 pounds. He was bald, and he always smoked a cigar. And it always looked like he was going to fall backwards, especially when he was walking fast. His arms swung side to side, a cigar was stuck in his mouth, and he was leaning backwards as fast as he could, and walking as fast as he could. Anyway, Mr. Rose raised, he had about 8 stores on Frankfurt Avenue, and he raised the rent 4%. One of his tenants was the draft board, all Irish. Now we got this guy, he's not even, he just became a citizen in time. He was Canadian, Harry Rose. This son of a gun is raising our rent. He happened to be about 35 years old. They drafted him. They sent him to Fort Dix, New Jersey, where he gave out shoes. So he got a hold of me and he said, "Now I'm not bar mitzvahed, I'm 12, almost 13. This was probably October, you know, that he had to go in. So he said, you couldn't get men. All the men were either in the army or in defense or doing something that required muscle. And the shoe store only had 2 women, the owner's wife and some nice lady, I don't remember her age. She was about 35, 40. He said, "You'll be able to take up, when the goods come in, the shoes and the slippers come in, You'll unpack the crate, the cartons, and you'll take the slippers, you bring them in the basement, and if there's any, okay, and you're needed, and they're going to give me 35 cents an hour. Well, I was making more than that. I was working about maybe 10 hours a week. That's all it took me. I had five stores. I could do windows. Maybe most of the stores had windows, maybe 8 feet, 12 feet, of windows.
So what did you decide to do?
Well, I wasn't going to do it. But my father came to the rescue. I told my mother and father about it at dinner. And we sat in a booth. Next thing I know, I'm sitting on the floor. I said, well, what did I do? Because I always did something. What did I do? He says, for being stupid. You can learn a profession. Everybody has feet. Do them. You could always make a living being a shoe salesman. This is an opportunity for you. I want you to go tomorrow morning, tomorrow afternoon, whenever you got some time. Just going to school. Tell them, thank them. Okay. So what's a good thing my father did for me? So I became the shoe salesman. Then it became interesting. Because first all I did was dust the shoe boxes and go down to the basement and get slippers, or they still had some
So what do you think they saw in you that enabled you to simply not, as a 12-year-old, not have to just dust shoes? What did they see?
No, I was younger than 12, a little bit. I think it was still 11.
So what did they see in you?
I don't know.
Well, what do you think?
A poor kid. I don't know.
What did you do right?
I was polite. I was always polite. I got that from my mother. I think they felt sorry for me because of my father. I think my father did it for me. Really, I think it's because they felt sorry for my mother and they felt sorry for me. My sister was too young. She was out of the picture then. She was only about 5 years old. But as improbable as this part of the story, we had a large Burroughs cash register, which had 20 black keys and 100 red keys, and had 6 drawers. It was probably the predecessor of a computer. The red keys were for inventory, 100 items of inventory, and the black keys were just cash, but it also could do some multiplication. The other part, there were two very important collections. One was ration stamps, because you couldn't buy shoes without a ration stamp. And you got 2 ration stamps out on average a year. You got 2 non-restricted shoes made out of rope, used automobile tires, and canvas. They fell apart in the rain. And you had leather shoes. Children got 2 pair a year. That's what the children got. And adults also could get, but the adults didn't buy the false material shoes. But kids needed them. And the soles of the sneaks, okay. But well,
not to be rude,
but
you're 11.
Okay.
He is 16.
Okay. So what happened is that Mrs. Rose and the lady, I don't remember her name, Florence, did the collections and had to make the deposits. The only checks that were written to vendors. We wouldn't accept checks, and we didn't accept, of course they didn't have credit cards in those days, just cash. And one of my jobs was because a lot of things were paid in coin, quarters and nickels and dimes and pennies. Shoes were $1.95, $3.95. They always made errors in the deposits. So much so that the bank was threatening them they're not going to accept their cash anymore. And the other thing is they didn't know how to operate the Burroughs cash register. They could operate it for some small amounts of money, but they were always making mistakes. Well, I couldn't do anything. But what ended up happening is that I collected I counted out the ration stamps. They were little black stamps. And I also added up the coins and the dollars and everything, and I ended up making the deposits, and I ended up balancing the checkbook, and I ended up going down, and I get a friend, you know, one of the kids I was friendly with, didn't go to high school. Wasn't going to high school then. One of the kids in the neighborhood that I knew, Herman Blecker usually, and we would go down and pick up, we called it the inventory, go down and pick up inventory because and came with the stamps, because the stamps, I had to have enough stamps so I can get the material. And I also ended up writing some of the checks and balancing the checkbook. Now that took a couple of years, but by the time, not quite a couple of years, by the time I was 13, I was handling all the finances. I was handling the finance. Where Mr. Rose would come in and he would help me. He was stationed about an hour and 20 minutes away at Fort Dix, giving out shoes.
Did anybody say anything to you? By that time, were you starting to...
No, I just thought it was fun.
But even then, that wasn't a big deal for a 12 or 13-year-old kid to be doing that stuff?
It didn't seem to be a big deal.
But was it, in fact?
Well, maybe. Yeah, it could be. It didn't seem like a big deal then, but it seems now, I think, gee, what's a big deal? And I only started thinking about it, you know, when my kids were like 12 and 13, especially your brother.
I was babysitting. I had a business. And
Yes, you did. Yeah.
I was making
But
money. I bought that bike.
But the other good part about that shoe store was, but later, a number of years later, I'm at Central High, and I'm wearing a shirt and a tie, and I'm 15 years old, and this fella came in, and he wanted his regular salesman, the guy's name was Phil, wasn't there. He was a senior guy, and the store had grown. I mean, in the summer of 1947, they took the store and half the store next to it and expanded it, and that's why I was free to work for my grandfather. So anyway, he said his regular salesman wasn't there, and I was making 50 cents an hour. But if you sold a Florsheim shoe, you got $1 a sale. And if you sold slippers, you got 25 cents. So when I was making 50 cents an hour, $4 a day. And Phil wasn't there, so Mr. Rose, out of the Army, of course, it's 1940, I think, no, it's 48, yeah, that was much later. He said, I'll take the young man there. I was making 50 cents an hour. And he ordered 2 pairs of Florsheim, $2. And he ordered 4 sets of slippers for the girls in his office. And he was always called doctor. How are you, doctor? Nice to see you, doctor. And when he left, I couldn't believe it. $3 in about 20 minutes. Oh, and he asked me to carry the shoes to his car. And he had a 1948 Buick Roadmaster, which was big as a Cadillac, dark blue, had air conditioning in 1948, and power steering and power glide. You didn't have to shift. Never saw a car like that. And I found out he was a dentist. And I knew Dr. Gross was a dentist. And I said, I'm going to be a dentist.
Why not a doctor?
Well, I was thinking to be a doctor too. No, I was still thinking I was going to be but everybody said, what do you mean? You can't be a doctor, a dentist. You can't be a dentist. You can't be, even in school, still at Central. But it wouldn't work out for me to be a physician. I would never make it. I had to work. I couldn't do it. Dentistry was a lot easier.
But it wasn't because you had a passion for dentistry?
No, I didn't have the passion. I had the passion for making a good living.
And if you had become a doctor, it wasn't because you had a passion for medicine?
Well, I could have, but I felt I don't think I could become a physician and work.
So if the situation were completely different and your objective wasn't to survive and make money, where would your passions have led you?
I would have gone to medicine.
Not that far off.
No, I didn't feel that way. But I saw opportunity. I saw some more opportunity in dentistry for me, because dentistry seemed ripe for change. You can't keep doing things like this. A guy's practicing in the basement of his house or the garage of his house. He answers the phone. He goes to the patient. He makes appointments. He autoclaves, washes his instruments, puts it in an autoclave. And the house that he lives in was bought by his father-in-law. I mean, I'm not gonna,
So let's jump ahead, unless there's something else from Central that you need to.
it gave me more confidence in myself. Because
And then you go straight into Penn.
I go straight into Penn. It was very easy, except for French.
You got a D in French, right?
Got a D in French. Well, that's because even Central, as good as it was, I had 2 years of French in Central, but no conversation.
It's okay, we forgive you.
And when I went to college, you take this placement exam, which is written, and I bombed it. I did great. And I went into class, and I made another mistake. I went into Evans. What's the women's college called? Not Evans. Well, there was a women's college at Penn at one time. They hadn't combined, and I went there. And now, because of the exam I took, I could skip the first year of French. Everybody was speaking French. I couldn't speak French. I couldn't understand French. It took me 6 months, but I had to do.
So the Penn experience, that just went smoothly, and there was nothing, but you loved it.
I liked it.
You were still working.
I was working for, more than ever because now I have tuition.
So what were you doing?
Well, that's when I told you. I missed my timing. I worked at the shoe store. And summers I went away first at a children's camp. I could make $300-400. Tuition was only $600. I went to Penn, not Temple, because Temple was $400 a year and Penn was $600. And I figured I can make $600. Not a problem. I could do that in the shoe store. Because in the shoe store I would work Easter, full week of Easter with a bonus, and 2.5 weeks over Christmas break, because they would go to Florida after, as soon as it was December 25th, Mr. Rose and Mrs. Rose, they had 2 children by this time, they went to Florida and left me in charge of the store. I slept, they had the living above the store, so I just I lived there for the 2 weeks.
So, but your only job during college was the shoe store?
No. Later in college, no, because I needed, tuition went from $300 to like $400 to $600. Every year it went up. No, I also, my Uncle Saul, I mentioned a little bit in the beginning of this conversation, got me a job to work nights at Cuneo Press, a mailer. I was a mailer. You worked off of an assembly line to mail magazines that were printed and had a post office, address.
So you would go to school from when to when?
Well, now I'm in college when I did
Right.
this, and I'm saving money to go to dental school. I would go my normal day in college, even if it were 9 to 5. I'd get home about 6. I'd have something quick to eat. I would take a nap, and at 11, by this time, my father was out of the house, and I was, fully grown, and I
Hang on. Yeah. Can you get it, Mom?
and at 11 I would drive.
Wait, hang on. We're going to start that thought again. But wait. We can talk, right? Okay. So you would go to school all day, and then what happened?
I come home, take a nap. I had it more refined than that later. I'll give you, when it's more refined, I would go on I'd try to make my schedule short. You can have a short day. So I come home, I would do whatever studying I had to do, have a quick dinner, take a nap, and go to Cuneo for the 12 o'clock shift, time and a half. You got and good salaries. I would make like $34, $35 a night. That's very good. Because the shoe store by that time I'm making about $1.50 an hour. I was good for about $18 a week at the shoe store. He never took anything out.
So school, an overnight shift, and then straight to school?
Yeah, I would shower.
And when were you working at the shoe store then?
I still worked in the shoe store on Friday nights and Saturday. I didn't work during the week in the shoe store anymore because I had Cuneo. But Cuneo, I only worked Cuneo like maybe 2-3 times a month. You know, I was an extra. But Saul would call me and says, somebody would take off and be sick or do something, and he'd save a spot for me, and he'd call me. He never gave me more than one a week. He knew the
So Penn
situation.
was pretty uneventful. There wasn't.
Well, I joined the boxing team at Penn.
Didn't you play lightweight football?
I did that, but I couldn't keep the weight down. Yeah, I did that, but but I couldn't keep the weight down enough. I was too heavy. They would take you supposed to be up to 155. Now I got myself down to about 168, and I kept thinking I'm going to get it down. I couldn't do it. I mean, within a week I was back to 180. At 178, though, I could do it for a day or two. I fought as a light heavyweight at Penn. I fought all the other kids, the Ivy League. But then they stopped it in before my senior year.
And at what point? So then, you were.
But that was not. It wasn't. It was. You would train at lunch.
At what point did you decide to actually become a dentist?
Well, I just realized it's going to be too tough. Too tough. I have to keep working. I was working at Cuneo.
No, but grades-wise, there were no deterrents? Like it was as simple as saying, okay, I want to be a dentist and I'm going to get into dental school and that's going to be that? It was as simple as that?
I knew I'd get into dental school. I had no trouble getting into dental school. I applied and a week later they accepted me.
And do you remember any feeling about...
No, because I felt, in the back of my mind, I thought, I'll become a dentist and then I'll become a physician. I really thought that.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so you said to yourself, someday maybe you'll be a doctor, so you went through dental school, and dental school was pretty much a breeze. You forged some good friendships, didn't you?
Yeah, I did, and I've kept them to this day. I'm still friendly with those guys.
Okay, I'm going to skip that part. Okay, so let's backtrack now, because somewhere along this time you met Mom.
Yeah.
So prior to that, though, you were just dating little girls from the neighborhood.
No, I started dating some of your mother's classmates, because.
Do you remember the first time you saw Mom?
Yeah, I do. Well, Earl Gross, who was my friend, good friend. We were very friendly because we both went to Central, and he was in those days. Then he was not in the role of the great dentist. He was going to be the great dentist. His father was a great dentist. He was an oral surgeon, and Earl was going to be a specialist, an oral surgeon. And so we went to school together, and we were probably equal in scholastic ability. He was not an athlete, but he was still a decent guy. And he had a girlfriend named Toby. And Toby was your mother's friend, good friend. And Earl was my good friend, so they wanted to have us meet. They thought we would get along. But unknown to Toby I thought Toby was an idiot. She barely got out of high school. She took like commercial courses. She used to go over to your grandmother's house and spend the morning instead of going to school. Yeah, for some reason, your grandmother allowed her to stay there. And she thought she was artistic. I thought she was...
It's It's okay. Leave it because. Can you leave it?
Yeah, I just want to turn it off. So, so I felt that any friend of Toby's, I didn't want to waste my time. Seriously. Um, I mean, I could take the girls out in the neighborhood if I wanted to waste my time. So I went double with Toby, a couple of times, which only reinforced my impressions of her. And so anyway, I'd worked in the mountains that one year.
So you hadn't met Mom yet?
No, in 1951. Although they were trying to get me to take your mother out, that I really would like her. She's, And then Earl said, Toby's friend is going to college. Toby has a friend that's going to go to college? I was very judgmental those days. Yeah, oh yeah, she got a scholarship. A scholarship to college? Temple. You're kidding. Huh. Well, I was working in the mountains. I came back from the mountains, but I remember that. And my friend Earl said, listen, this girl Loretta is in Atlantic City. Why don't you come to Atlantic City? And you'll stay at my father. His father had a condo in Atlantic City then, really nice, 5 rooms in one of the big hotels. You'll stay at the place. My parents are going to go home. They won't be there. This is perfect. I think, yeah, how bad could it be? So I was to meet him on the beach, and I was on the beach, and your mother came, turquoise bathing suit, and she'd been in Atlantic City all summer. I couldn't believe it. Holy smokes. Well, I'm going to have to sit up. I was shocked. Your mother looked great. And she's going to college. And she wasn't like Toby. She was like 180 degrees. I often marveled, how would she be friendly with Toby? And I took her out. And what really impressed me is that I was going to take, I was working in a shoe store then, and I was working at Cuneo. And I was a junior, going to my senior year in college. And she was going to be a freshman. I was 19. Your mom was 17. And I kept calling her for dates, and she's always busy. So I said, well, if you don't want to go out with me, just say, hey, I'm not going out with you. Paranoia set in.
Did you actually say that to her?
Sure. So she said, no. She said it just happened that way. And she wouldn't make a date more than, I think it was 2 weeks ahead. She said, okay, you can take me out just before my birthday. Now, I took her out in August. After Labor Day, we were in Philadelphia, and I'm calling her. And now she said, you take me out the weekend before my birthday. I said, be my pleasure. So that was it. I got a date with her, and she looked great. But what impressed me just as much is your grandmother looked great.
She didn't like you?
No. No. Well, I remember while I was waiting, what I didn't expect, because in Atlantic City, your mother was on time, or with them. So I get over there from the shoe store, get out early to take out this really nice looking girl. Tell my boss, hey, I got to get out of here by 8:15. He says, I tell him why. Okay. I get out at 8:15. I'm at your mother's at 9:15. You're supposed to leave at 9. I'm going to take her probably to a 10 o'clock, 9:30 movie downtown, and we're going to then have something to eat afterward. She's not ready. But so you're talking to your grandmother, and your grandmother was, what is your last name? Brody. Ah, Brody. And where do you live? And I tell her. Now, my father was in a mental home at that time. So I couldn't. I'm hoping the conversation doesn't get there. So when she asked me, what does your father do? I said, well, he was a firefighter, but he was injured, and this is all true, injured in a pharmaceutical plant that blew up, and he was injured, and he's recovering. And do you have any other relatives here? And I'm thinking, why are we getting this whole, and I mentioned my mother's name. She said, I'm not familiar with, she said, but Brody, I'm familiar with the Brody name, you know.
Infamous at that point.
I'm sorry?
It's infamous at that point, right?
Well, it was always a kind of like infamous. So I don't think she was too thrilled with my
When did that
heredity.
change?
I don't know. Well, I took Mike out a lot, you know. But it took years. Look, I went with your mother 4 years almost before we got married. And it was about 3 years before we became engaged.
But she liked you by then?
Who, your mother?
No, my grandmother.
She wasn't thrilled with the choice. Your mother had a lot of guys who were after her. All of them weak.
Inferior. Okay, so
No, your mother. I liked your grandmother.
so you know what would be nice is how did you propose to Mom?
Well, let's see. I took her out senior in college. I went away every summer to work. And she went to Atlantic City and had a wonderful time, which didn't bother me. And then in the fall, we would go out again. And then in my sophomore year in college, in the second half of my sophomore year, I just said, you know, do you like any of these guys? And I had something, and I knew a couple of them, and I had something detrimental to say about them. She'll tell you. But I did it in a joking way. And I knew that we were in love. And by the end of it, you know, our second. But anyway, well, we're going together in like 2 years by this time. And so we decided that we were just going to see each other, see how it works out. Because I'm still going away in the summer. And then in the summer of my sophomore year, going to be a junior, I bought her a ring. And she accepted it. We got engaged. And your grandmother, by this time your grandmother and I got along. You know, your grandmother had a good sense of humor. I don't know. She had this kind of like sarcasm that was really almost delicious to listen to. But I liked her. We get along very well.
Didn't you propose to Mom in a car? Like,
yeah,
I
did.
Very unromantic, or?
Seemed all right to me. Yeah, I was driving her to visit my mother. My mother's going to. I was back from the mountains. I worked in a union place, so I got 2 days off a week. Sometimes I'd even go to Atlantic City. You know, other times, you know, I either just hung around up there, you know, in the Catskills. It wasn't that far from Philadelphia. It's about a 2-hour ride, and about almost a 3-hour ride to Atlantic City. And I'd go to Atlantic City and I'd stay with...
okay, with the proposal.
I just said something, we have to make this official. I mean, we're going, you know, we're going steady, and I give you my fraternity pin because I belong to a dental fraternity, you know, but I have a ring. And then I gave her the ring.
What was her reaction to this?
She expected it. I said, here, this is a ring. We should be engaged.
Was she
okay.
happy?
I think she was surprised at the ring, size of the ring. It's about 3 times the size of Sarah's. You can take that out.
And was it in fact at like a stoplight or something that you?
Yes. No, it was on Roosevelt Boulevard.
You were literally driving.
But Roosevelt Boulevard had stoplights.
So
And we
at a
stopped.
stoplight,
Yeah.
there was no part of you that said I've seen a lot of movies, it looks very romantic, it's very nice, maybe I should make this into a moment.
It was a moment. Well, you don't think so? I thought it was.
Okay,
Right.
it worked, apparently it worked just fine.
And I brought her home, and my mother had something for us. I don't remember if she did or she didn't, but brought her home and said, "Mom, meet your future daughter-in-law." But she knew I was going to marry her.
And she liked her.
Oh yeah, your mom was very nice. She was. She was nice to my mother.
Mm-hmm.
Very nice to my mother. My mother really liked her.
And Maureen liked her.
Maureen liked her. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so now you're getting married, you graduate dental school, and do you go straight into the Navy?
Straight into the Navy. Well, what happened is before I became engaged, I was working in the mountains, and my mother called me as a waiter. Mother called me and she said, "I have a letter here. It's very serious. The Korean War started." This was 1950. Oh, actually, I wasn't in dental school yet. And I didn't know your mother. This was in 1950. I was going into my junior year in college. And the government had said that they're not going to draft anybody in their junior year if they're in the upper 50% of their class. And I was on my upper 80% of my 85, 90. So I wasn't worried. This was in July of 1950. The Korean War started in June 25th in 1950, and we were in big trouble. And but I wasn't worried because they said, "Hey, they're not going to draft me." With the draft board, what happened in my neighborhood, Mayfair, that's where I lived then, all these kids, they took like commercial courses, and they were going to work for the unions, or they're going to be policemen or firemen or work for the electric company or be plumbers or do something. They weren't going to go to college. I was in a neighborhood. Nobody went to college. Brody went to college, and the guy down the street, Hauk, went to college. So the draft board didn't have anybody to draft. Everybody enlisted. Even those two kids with the automobile driving around going to Shallcross enlisted at 18, and they were in the service for 4 years. And they learned a trade. Nobody to draft. So I went, and luckily the draft board was run by Dr. Blessing, who was my family pediatrician. It was my pediatrician. He used to sew me up, or I'd have broken noses a couple of times, trying to fight somebody a little too big, probably. So he would fix my broken nose. And anyway, they said they can't help it. They're going to have to draft me. So we don't have anybody to draft, and we can't take people. We don't want to take married men with children, and we don't want to take somebody who's already fought in World War II, and everybody else is enlisted. So, okay, what am I going to do? At this time, I really thought I was going to be a dentist, though, because of my experience with both Dr. Heron was his name, that guy with, Heron and Dr. Gross. So, okay. So he says, "I want to talk to you." Everybody leaves the draft, the thing. I'm going to go in July, end of July. That's what I was thinking. This is not good. So he said, "Larry," he said, "you did very well in high school. Everybody talks about how good you did, and you're doing very well at Penn. I thought you were a pretty smart kid." What's he talking about? I said, "Well, I do all right in school. I'm in the, almost the top quintile almost of my class." So he says, "Yeah, I thought you were pretty smart. Did you never join the ROTC?" So I don't know. So you're pretty smart, right? Oh, but I was going to join after the summer. Ah, very good, very good. Tell you what, you join, and we'll get you back here October 1st. And if you're in the ROTC, we'll let you graduate and become an officer. Very nice. So I did. School came, I joined the Naval ROTC, became an officer when I graduated, and I was supposed to go in. I figured, by the time I'll save money in the Navy, time I get out of the Navy, I hadn't met your mother yet, By the time I get out of the Navy, I'll have a little bit of money, and maybe I will be able to go to the medical school or dental, whatever. I don't care. That's what I'm going to do. Well, peace came. They had an armistice. I'm now an ensign. I'm an officer. The worst officer in the whole world. Yeah. What I went on Monday, I took the courses. It's like one course. It's like a lab course, 3 hours. And you had a drill, but I didn't have to have a uniform. And I had all the exams. They had file drawers of exams. And all I had to do was know what exam was going to be, and I would take it. So, but because I didn't do 4 years of naval rotary, I had to spend 2 years in dental school in naval rotary. And that's it. So I got to be an ensign while I was still in the Navy, still in dental school. And by this time I have a jacket. I still have the jacket downstairs in storage. Jacket of all the meetings I went to and the sign off by my superior officer so like I had to have 10 meetings.
So none of those other guys, like Kane, Gross,
They did it too.
They all did it. So you
Yeah,
were all
we all did
officers.
it. Yeah, well, we had to. If we didn't do it, we'd go in. We'd go in as enlisted people in the Army and get shipped to Korea. One guy that I went to school with, he went to Drexel though. He went in. He had 6 weeks training, infantryman. Got off the ship. Got in a truck, 2x4, 2 front wheels, four back wheels. Got close to the front. Took a break. Had his heel shot off by a sniper. Got back on the ship. In time, he was able to go to pick up his courses at Drexel without a heel. He had to wear prosthesis for the rest of his life, but he had the GI Bill. Now they had the GI Bill.
So you were enabled to graduate dental school, and then
Well,
you
now I'm an
fulfill
officer.
your-
Yeah, I graduate dental school, and within, I was still working. By this time, though, I'm working at other things. I left the shoe store. They couldn't pay me enough because I was really now able to make some money. Because being a waiter, a busboy and a waiter in the Catskills, and working in a union place, I had a union card. You can't work without a union card. I could take that union card, go to Philadelphia, and present it to the local union, a Tuxedo 222. 222 was a Tuxedo union. That's how I worked in that Italian restaurant. And now I got into, by this time I'm kind of knowledgeable how the world works. I was able to start working for caterers. And I knew enough from my waiting experience, because I usually got the buddies with the chefs, in these resorts. Especially I'm going with your mother, I'm not going to fool around with the girls. I just couldn't do it. So anyway, so I knew kitchens, I knew I knew it. So I started working and so I was still only making about $20 a week at the shoe store. He got me up to like $2.50 an hour. But I could work a catered fair, and if I could work a good weekend, I could make $100 on a weekend.
And when you were serving?
Sorry?
You were a waiter at those, like
and a couple of things. I was the head waiter for the fairs. I knew how to talk to people. I could sell myself.
Okay, so now you graduate dental school.
Yes,
And
and
you go to where did you?
I went to a retraining center. It was Bainbridge, Maryland, and your mom and I are married a whole year. And if I'm going to, this is the Navy. Most of the dentists, a lot of the dentists are shipped overseas. A lot of them went to Korea. A lot of them went to Japan, even Italy, the Mediterranean. you know, we had still weren't having a good time with Russia, the communists. A lot of them went to Germany, England, and they didn't go with their wives. And I don't want to go out. What am I going to do? Now, my friends were never not married. You know, Stan and all my friends, none of them got married. And so when I got there, they saw this jacket. Jacket is your history in the reserves. And according to the officers and the people at Bainbridge, I was one of them. Where do you want to Where do you want to go? I said, I'll stay here. And that's what I did.
It wasn't so bad.
Oh, it's great.
Okay, so
I was able to get a job as a dentist while I was in the Navy.
So that was 2 years?
Almost 2 years. What happened is Eisenhower became president. You know, Truman was the president when I got in. Eisenhower became the president, and he started to say, we have these all these training centers, we don't need them. You
so
know.
Were you happy or you were disappointed?
What, to get out?
Yeah.
Thrilled. I want to stay in the Navy. I was no hero.
So then what did you do?
Well, I took the Florida boards.
Oh yeah, but talk about your honeymoon.
Oh, our honeymoon was great. We went to Florida. It's the first vacation I had ever.
First time you were on a plane, right?
What?
Was it
First time I was on a plane.
And mom too?
Yeah.
And you came to Miami Beach, right?
Yeah.
Talk about that.
Well,
Because that's a very pivotal part of the story.
I had a desire to practice in Miami because they come out, the American Dental Association has surveys of where the dentists are happiest, and usually they're most happy where they have the greatest earnings. And the two best states to earn money as a dentist was California and Florida. California seemed too far away. I'm going to go to Florida.
Just like that.
Not just like that.
No, but in your mind it was as
In my mind, Florida was a strong candidate, but I had New Jersey boards and I had Pennsylvania boards. And I had worked, this is an interesting, I don't know how you can incorporate this, but come back to me and ask me, what was I doing in the Navy, you know?
You can just say it.
Huh?
You can just say it.
All right. Your mom was with with your grandmother in Philadelphia. She wasn't pregnant then, but she went up there for the weekend. And maybe she had she was teaching then, so maybe she had a 4-day weekend. And I drove by myself from Bainbridge to Philadelphia at the end. It was Friday night, but it was light out. And I had to stop at the one red light in Oxford, Pennsylvania. Oxford, Pennsylvania is a Mennonite community. They're like Mormons. No, not like Mormons, like Quakers, like the Amish. And my bad luck, I'm thinking, what the hell is this? The one red light on US 1. US 1 went through Oxford. And I'm stuck here. And I turn to my left and I see Royal Order of the Moose. Nice. And I look up and it says, dentist wanted. I think, this has got to be a joke. In the city of Oxford, not a city, the town of Oxford, somebody is advertising for a dentist with a sign on a window on the second floor. I have to see this. I go around the corner, make a left turn, I park, the parking for the dental office in the back, and I go up the steps, and it's a converted apartment, and it sounds melodramatic. The woman there is nice, 35, 40-year-old woman. She says, oh, are you from the base? Because everybody knew about Bainbridge. It was a huge base, even though it was about 35, 40 minutes away to the west and south. Are you from the base? Because I'm in my Navy uniform. I said, I am. She says, we've been waiting for you. She says, let me get the doctor. And out comes a guy smoking a cigar, looking like he has just slaughtered a steer. Blood on his gown. And he's, so you're a dentist? Yeah, I'm a dentist. Brings me into a room that had been, this had been an apartment, that now he's using as a lab. And he says, see this place? You ever hear of gold mines? And I'm thinking, oh, this is not a gold mine. I said, doesn't look like a gold mine. I'm thinking in my head, it's a diamond mine. He says, I'm going to give this office to you. And then I'm thinking, this is just like when they gave me windows to wash. And that's what I'm thinking. And it's just ridiculous. So he says, how long can you stay here? I said, well, I have to call my wife and my wife's family to expect me, for dinner. He says, call them. Tell them you'll be late. So I called him, tell him I'll be about a half hour, an hour late. And he said, it's okay. And I told him why. And he says, he says, it took me a bunch of years, to pass the Delaware boards. The Delaware boards were very hard to get. They were restricted. Minorities. One minority a year.
And a Jew was considered a minority.
And blacks. Jews and blacks. They kind of like shifted them around a little bit. And it was a small state. It's less than 1 million people, so they don't need a lot of dentists.
Okay, but wait, can I get something straight? Were they there's somebody else was supposed to be coming from the base? They were actually expecting somebody else?
No.
They were waiting for someone to
They're
stop.
Waiting for months and months for someone to come by. And this guy, it'd take too long to tell you, this guy was a hero in World War II. He was wounded, captured by the Nazis, escaped, saw guys being shot. This was at the Battle of the Bulge. They were shot.
So he hired you on the spot?
No. No. He didn't hire me. He offered me the office on the spot. Didn't hire me. This is quick, too quick.
Mm-hmm.
And the equipment was all like used ancient equipment. It wasn't good equipment. And nice here. We should think about coming here.
And she said what?
She wasn't. She was pretty good about it. I mean, your mom was. She was pretty good about it.
And then, so you just made it happen. So now you build your first office.
I'm sorry?
You come down, you build your first.
Well,
we can skip all those steps about the boards and everything.
Yeah, well, it was easy to. I passed the boards easily. I took, and Florida boards only about 25% passed. Because they wanted to keep the supply of dentists low. The dentists who were here didn't want a lot of dentists here. They wanted supply of dentists low so they can keep their fees high.
So you open your office, and what's remarkable about that?
No. Well, what happened was I found out, I was at your great uncle Harry's house on one of the holidays. I was in the Navy, and I'm going to go to Florida, and their next door neighbor said, she said, I have a nephew who's in Florida with another friend, with a friend of his. They opened their office. They're doing great. They're doctors, physicians. I said, oh, yeah, who are they? What's their name? They gave me I know those guys. I called them immediately because I'm coming down, to look around. And I didn't know these two. I knew these two guys. I went to Hebrew school with these guys. I went to Central High School with these guys. They were a year older than I. And I knew them, and we got along. And they said, and I said, where are you practicing? I'm coming down there. I'd like to see you guys. And they said, well, they knew about me. They said, you're thinking of Florida? I said, I am. Great, because we're going to open an office. And you can have, maybe you can have some space in the office. And that's what happened. I went down there, we made a deal.
So then when did you get the place in Opa-locka?
Which place? The big one?
Yeah.
Well, before I got that, I mean, there was a synergy of being in the same building and almost sharing resources. Almost. It didn't work out. I couldn't deal with their people. They weren't well trained. But they had enough patient flow and enough dollar volume that they could be inefficient. So the first thing I did is, when we opened an office together, we opened it together. I had the dental wing, and they had a medical wing, and they also put in a operating room and 9 patient beds. Because in those days in Dade County, you can get a license because there were so scarce medical facilities and were growing so rapidly that they allowed this to happen. And they were the ones that decided to build a hospital, but I could help them because I seemed to be good on supply things and expenses, like the shoe store. To me, it was just a big shoe store. And that's one of the things that happened. And then from that office, we built the hospital, and I was the financial officer for the hospital. We had a accountant, but I had to sign every check.
What was the name of the hospital?
Cloverleaf. We had patients, engineers, and they were living in the neighborhood because they were redesigning all the highways in North Dade and going up. And that Cloverleaf didn't exist when we were there. So we bought a bunch of old houses that were like shacks that had been built there. None of them hardly had air conditioning. I mean, really, we bought all that land up and paid the people more than they expected because we knew where the Cloverleaf was going to be and where the space was going to be, and we got enough space that we could build a hospital because we were very busy in that. It was called Golden Glades Medical Dental Center. I had the dental center part taken off because the Dental Society said we're starting to, I was marked. First of all, we didn't segregate our patients. We were all from Philadelphia. And the Dental Society came and warned me about that.
What'd they say?
They sent a Jewish dentist to me, a guy named Friedman, and he said, "Listen, Larry, you're not starting off right here. Yeah, I know you're a good guy. Number one, people are a little jealous of your success, and they think that you're doing this because you're with physicians, and that's an unfair advantage for you. Seriously. Number two, you don't have segregated offices, and that's not good. You can't buck the trend." This is 1958. And I said, "Well, I'm from Philadelphia, and everybody's the same, and especially Friedman. What the hell are you talking about? I mean, like, say, okay, so, blacks are segregated. Jews should be segregated. Maybe Italians too. I mean, what are you talking about?" So.
It actually got contentious?
Oh yeah, very contentious. I was marked. I was a marked person. And they were jealous of my success.
But there was no way you were going to...
Oh, you can't do that. I couldn't do that.
And it wasn't ever an issue, right? I mean,
What wasn't an issue? With the patients?
Yeah.
Not an issue. They told me that black people wouldn't come to the office. They told me white people wouldn't come to the office. We were jammed. People weren't. It was the officials that were so bad. So anyway, we became very successful, and then we built the hospital, and then we had some troubles because nobody would refer to us. So, this was my idea, let's build satellite offices. We'll build medical dental offices. And we did. We built 5 of them. And we hired doctors. I couldn't hire dentists, though. There weren't enough of them around then. But what I did is I just rented out the space to them and didn't have anything to do with their offices, though I would try to help them. But don't forget, I was young. I was 28 years old. And we have a hospital, and we have 5 satellite centers.
And What time did you have your big office?
I got that, well, we sold the hospital.
Profitably?
Oh, yeah. I didn't have as big of it. I didn't have the money. They had backing. Pierce had, Pierce's wife had a lot of money. I mean, they were millionaires. Pierce married a millionaire's daughter. And Brooke had money, too. Even though they lived in Mayfair, but their family, the women they married had money. And everybody thought I married money. Right?
Too bad for them. So
The other thing about this hospital is I had to sign all the checks. So I was the only one with business train, with some business background. And I got a call from the secretary of the president of a bank. She wanted to see me. Now, running that bank was very difficult. Other physicians would not refer patients to us because they're going to make us rich. And so we had these satellites, but it was very tough. We were really, really having a lot of trouble. We were just barely making up everything. We owed money for just things like toilet paper. We had to buy that on time. I mean, it was very tough. I was a little tense then. So anyway, I got a call from the secretary of the president of the bank that we banked with, and we had a lot of loans with them. And I tell my two friends, I say, hey, listen, I got this. Holy shit, what are we going to do? All right, tell them we'll get the money, because we were like behind in our loans. We were behind in our vendors. We were just having trouble. We had a boycott against us. So when I went to him, I found out that he didn't even know that we were behind on our loans. And he said, I really want a doctor on my board. So I figured, well, he thinks I'm a physician, because everybody says, oh, he's a doctor, he's a dentist. So I said, well, I'm very interested in being on your board. I'm a dentist. Oh, a dentist. Ah, you'll be Dr. Brody. That's that. He wanted a Dr. Brody, he wanted a doctor. And I said, I know nothing about banking. I can write a check, I can balance a checkbook. I knew nothing about how to run a bank or the rules of a bank. He said, I'm going to teach you. He gave me a bunch of books. And he says, now you'll come to the next Tuesday, we'll have lunch together. I came back that Tuesday. I had read whatever he told me to read, and it wasn't hard. And now I'll be away for a couple of weeks, and then we'll call you. Okay. And we'll have a vote. The board has to vote on you. So that Sunday, I take Robert out so your mom can sleep, take him to the ponies, have donuts, chocolate milk, come back, and she says to me, Mr. Banker, did you read the paper? No. I said, I didn't read the paper. I was with Robert. I wanted to get him out of the house so he wouldn't wake up. She says, read the paper. So I read the front page. This guy, Mosler was his name, French-Canadian. The family made big, giant commercial safes for a couple hundred years in France and in Canada. And he had so much money, he came and he built a bank. He's killed by his wife's nephew. He had a wife, Candace Mosler. She was Miss Orange Bowl, and she was Miss Romper Room. And she was old enough to be his granddaughter. She was about 32, 33, and he was in his late 60s. So what had happened is that his wife, Candace Mosler, Miss Romper, was having an affair with her sister's son, her nephew. And the nephew shot and killed Mosler and got off.
And you did not get to be a member of the bank board?
Oh, no. I just said, nobody said I'm not. So I went to the next meeting. And I told the secretary, Mr. Mosler wanted to be on me on this board, and everybody's, okay, Mr. Mosler wanted it, so I got on the board. I was on that board till 1984. No, was it 84?
Okay, so let's pick.
Yeah.
So now it's almost 7:30.
Goodbye.
No, we gotta finish. So let's pick
What?
How much time do you have?
How much longer do you think you have?
I don't know. I'm gonna have to
20 minutes.
speed it along.
10 minutes?
Well,
No, more.
well, no, I just find out. How much time do you have?
I have dinner plans.
Tell me.
8:30-ish?
So,
About an hour?
okay. Well, let's try and do this in
Okay.
half hour.
Yeah,
Is that
half
good?
hour. We'll be finished.
Okay.
All the hard work's over.
The hard work, the heavy lifting is over. Okay. So,
We could do more another time too.
and I think we want to.
Whatever you want. Whatever you want. You can wrap it up.
Too hard to,
You can wrap it up.
to rein it in.
Go ahead. Go.
Okay, so talk to me about. I mean, the Cygnus stuff was a pretty big deal.
Oh, it was a very big deal.
Huh?
Well, we sold the hospital. We sold the hospital. It's too bad I can't tell you what happened to one of my partners.
Yeah, don't tell me now.
I will tell you another time,
Okay.
off the record here. So we sold the hospital. We had a lot more money. And Pierce retired. He went to law school, my partner, Pierce. And my other partner, Brooke, got into trouble with the government. And in lieu of going to prison, he agreed to go to some poverty-stricken area in northwest Arkansas. His wife divorced him. And
Okay, okay.
you know,
It's
well, I'm
not
just
his
saying.
story. This is your story.
Okay, I'm just saying how volatile things were. And I built a very large office. Originally, it had dental chairs, 12, and I had 6 in the old office. I'd gone from 3 to 6. Now I have 12, and I'm hiring specialists. And eventually, I had a physician, a group of physicians in there. And eventually I put another 6 in the space that I was saving for myself.
Now, is this innovative?
Very. Nobody had a group practice like that. Of course, I had specialists that worked for
What gave
me.
you the idea?
The medical side, the medical had group practices. When I say group, it means, like all the specialists together. And it wasn't difficult for me to get the specialists. Everybody says the specialists will never work for a general dentist, but they worked for me.
So back in those days, there was a general dentist, and then if you needed orthodontic work, you had to go to a different office.
Well, even today.
And then if
It's still that way today.
Really?
Yes,
Is
always.
that true? Is that what happens with you?
No? Well, he doesn't need specialty care, probably.
I purposely don't. I try not to need specialty care.
Excellent thinking.
But it's, so you can't ever work now.
And keep that thought in mind when don't go to a coroner. You don't need one of those either.
So you just decided that model made sense.
Well, I had it in the old office. My second associate was an oral surgeon. When we built the hospital, I brought in Morty Lieberman became my oral surgeon. I had an orthodontist, an oral surgeon.
And did it work right away?
Of course. Of course.
For some reason, when you tell your segregation story, I always picture that lobby.
Oh,
But that wasn't it.
well, that lobby wasn't segregated.
But where other officers were still
Oh,
segregated.
well, until the 60s, mid-60s.
Yeah, in my head, I always picture that office.
Yeah, well, it was a nice office. Beautiful.
Okay, so you have you create a new model,
Yes, I created a new model.
and then you created it elsewhere as well.
Not yet. No, I use that model I use it as a laboratory. My thought was, because I'm still liberal, but I was very liberal then, I felt dentistry was too high priced. I think it's abominable now, but I thought it was just too high priced. And I also felt that the expense of dentistry really is the unused resources that the office has. An empty chair is a big expense, like an empty cab or an empty table. Probably thought more of like the empty, dining table or restaurant table. If it's not full, you're not making money. Overhead goes on and on and on. So I just used that concept, and I really developed it that it could be portable. So I used that as, what am I going to charge 100,000 people? they're not all going to come to the dentist, but if I charge each one a very low fee, annual fee, you can call it insurance, but it's not, it's just a prepayment plan. And that's how I got into, quote, the dental insurance. But that was resisted mightily by the dental society. In fact, they tried to put me out of business. So I threatened to take them to court. I had the best good lawyers. By this time I felt they're feeble-minded. They don't know what's really happening in the world, and they're just the dentists.
And how old were you by then?
Let's see. 1974. I started in 1974. I think it was 71 when I started my ideas.
And
So 71, I was almost 40, 39, 38, 39.
And no one else was.
I was the first in the state of Florida.
But had you looked at models in other states?
I went to California, and I saw something that a union had done. And I got friendly with the doctors who were teaching at UCLA. These were credible men. Credible. I didn't say incredible. They were credible men. They didn't know what they were doing. Not quite. I was able to borrow what they were, take what they have and expand on it.
So you brought the concept here, and it worked right away?
Slowly. And then the state was so pleased with how it was working out for people, and then I went to the unions. I knew unions very well. I was a member of 3 unions at one time while I was working through school. The retail clerks with the shoe store, the Cuneo Press, and also waiters union.
So the unions accepted it right away?
Well,
That's a big contract.
I could talk to them.
But that's a big contract.
Well, I got the teachers union, the police, the firemen. Not just in here. I got through the whole state of Florida.
Why wouldn't you buy me a bike?
I was trying to make a man out of you.
Jesus. Right, my brother's disgusting bike, and you're doing all this stuff. I was born at exactly the age that I wanted that yellow bike. Anyway.
You never got a bike?
I finally got the bike, and then I had the next bike I had to buy myself.
Exactly. I brought all my kids up the same way.
Okay, so...
That's the problem I had. I still remember how my father, I thought that worked out well with me. I'm successful. I'm going to make them successful. I think it helped you.
I'm actually very glad. I am very glad, although I really wanted that bike. Okay, so my question, what?
How much longer?
We're getting about 20 minutes.
Okay, I made dinner.
You did?
Mhm.
What do you make?
Whatever I had, so you're just going
Maybe.
to.
Do you have enough for it?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
Yes, dinner.
Yeah, I'm supposed to go to someone's birthday dinner tonight.
Oh, okay. Okay.
They
Thank
play
you. Thank you.
Parmesan.
Oh, delicious. Thank you.
That
And
sounds
some
delicious.
pasta, and if you want, you can make a salad.
Oh,
I'll make a salad.
salami? And cheese?
I don't have salami.
Of course. Okay.
Amazing.
You have a birthday party?
Yeah, someone's birthday, we're at dinner.
Oh, that's not. We'll get you out of here in time. Go ahead,
All right,
quick.
hurry up. Okay, so at some point, the big people, whoever they are, start to take notice, right?
Well, first of all, I was starting to threaten some of the major insurance companies in the country, and I knew, talking to them, I knew that if I don't join them, meaning they're going to buy me out, they're going to compete with me, and I won't be able to compete against Cigna or Aetna. I could in a small way, but by this time, the challenge was over for me, or that kind of business. I could sell it to them and be secure for the rest of my life, and my family would be pretty secure. So I sold out to them, but lo and behold, running that, they offered me to be the CEO of Cigna Dental, 12 million people. I thought, I think I'd like to try that. Turned out to be, then we bought Equitable Dental Insurance, and suddenly we're close to 20 million, and I'm running it. And I did that for 6 years.
Why'd you stop?
I got bored.
So,
I mean, let me see, what did I do? Oh yeah. I know what was
did
happening.
you go to IVACS?
What?
You went to
No, no.
Can I ask you something
yeah.
first to remember what you did? I want to ask something really quickly. Is there any point during this when you're flying back and forth to Philadelphia and all
Oh
these other
yeah,
places,
that was,
is there any point that you say to yourself, geez, this is kind of remarkable? I was this little kid with my red wagon, taking groceries home with my dad telling me that I should be a shoe salesman. I'll never amount to anything, and
No, he didn't say I wouldn't amount to anything.
he guaranteed you wouldn't amount to anything.
Yeah.
But is there any point that you say to yourself, huh,
No. But it was so gradual. It may seem fast to you, but it didn't seem fast to me. It seemed gradual. You know, I could do this. I could do that. After I left
Cigna?
Cigna, well, while I was with Cigna, you know, I had been, you know, that original bank was Central Banks. You know, I was a director there, and then after I was satisfied that I really could do this dental insurance bit, I wanted my banks. We had about 12, 14 banks, and I felt that our dental insurance was too high, that I could give the people a better deal. In fact, they didn't even have to take mine just exclusively. The people that wanted to spend less money for their dentistry, they could, and the ones that would keep the other insurance. But they had an insurance broker on the board, and I said, listen, you'll get the same commission from me as you get from the other. He says, no, I'm not going to cheapen my plan. This is for poor people. I said, look, we're doing better dentistry than the average dentist because we have review and protocols. I'm not going to do it. So I was telling the story to my lawyer, I had a couple of good lawyers, and they said, you ought to start your own bank. So I said, well, and he opens the drawer and he throws here's a charter. You say the word, we'll get other clients, but with you, by this time I have kind of a reputation here. Good one, not bad. And he said, you say the word, we'll get some other people. I have a couple of people. I said, well, I'm busy with this. You know, I'm kind of busy with, you know, my dental plans. And they said, just your name, and we have another good name, and we're going to get it. So we got it. We got the charter. So now I become the treasurer of the bank, and one of 3 people on the executive board, and we get some other nice people. We start a bank, and it's very successful. And in 1984, that was 1980, I'm still not with Cigna. In 84, I'm being bought out by Cigna. I'm waiting till 84, January 84, because they changed the income tax, the capital gains from 29% a year, 29% to 20%.
Okay.
Well, that's very important.
It was important at the time, not so important now. Go ahead.
Okay, so at that time, I'm going to work for Cigna. I also we decided to sell the bank.
That was Lincoln, right? Was it?
Lincoln Savings and Loan. Yeah, we sold it. And it was just a remarkable year for me. I got sold this, got this, and I got that, you know. Now I can go to medical school. Only teasing.
Well, you could send me to college. That's the year I graduated high school.
84?
Yeah.
Oh, I did, didn't I?
Yes.
Okay. Excellent.
It's better than a bike.
Yeah. No.
Oh.
No. What came up during that? No, now I'm in Cigna. Now, suddenly, people are paying attention to me. And when I say, what's that? They say, what do you mean, what's that? You know, they're really listening to me. And I try to buy an HMO. That's the government has seized. And Cigna's going to be 50%. I'll be 25, and Pierce will be 25. Because I needed a lot of cash. I wasn't going to put all my money and it was very expensive. We didn't get it because politically, Aetna took it over. So I was involved with that. And then
let's go to the next significant event because we're going to run out of time.
the next significant event was I started, because of my banking experience, 2 banks now, people are listening to me when I say we could do better if we take this bank over. So we try to take over At that time, it was called AmeriFirst. It was the largest S&L in Florida. The largest, had the largest land holdings except for St. Joseph's in the Panhandle. We owned, and we took it over. We didn't want to take it over. What we wanted to do is flip it, take control, and then merge it with Trans-Ohio. It was very, very interesting for me. I like that kind of stuff. And I got rid of our lawyers, and I brought John's firm in from Hollywood, and John was now our lawyers. But banking went into decline at that time. I never got to flip it, and the bank didn't work out. It was not a good thing. Lost a lot of money.
Let's move on.
Okay.
Okay. Next was
Oh, but because of that bank, and because we had a lot of investors, and they saw how I was running it, I had the first bank without walls in Florida. I did not have tellers in my main banks. I had financial consultants, even for deposits. You didn't have to stand in line, and go to a teller, You could make an appointment, and we kept those appointments. And I did that in about 3 to 5 banks, the bigger ones. And we were gaining about $10 million a month in deposits. We were flourishing. We owned all the land and leased to all the stores at, what's the big one up? What?
Sawgrass.
Sawgrass. And we owned land all over. We had about 70 branches. This was not a small thing that I was running. So because of that, Phil Frost got a hold of me. He was one of the investors in our group and wanted me to run IVEX for him. And I did, 3 years. And we grew from, we became Fortune 500 Company of the Year. That's not a small thing. And I was Chief Operating Officer of the Fortune 500 Company for the year. I stayed there 3 years, and it was just, I never had an idea. Phil had the ideas. I never had one. It wasn't my, and for me to get something done, I had to tell him, Phil, you were right. Remember that thing you were telling me about? You were right. He says, I have so many thoughts, so many good ideas. Are you sure? Which one was that? And I'd explain it and lay it out. And he says, that was a good idea. That's the only way I can get anything done there. And then I just got tired of it. I left.
It's the Frost Science Museum now.
I left. Within 8 months, he couldn't get another operating officer that pleased him. Within 8 months, the stock went from 33 to 6.
Bum, bum, bum.
That didn't help me.
No.
Then I got a call from a guy who was a headhunter. He looked for people. I used him for a lot of my companies, and he invited me, and it turned out it was the Mayo Clinic. I was their first, and I took the job. I was their first president of a for-profit company, because they're not for profit, but they made a for-profit company of me, and so I worked there for 6 months, but I saw it wasn't going to work out. Besides, it was like getting into problems. I was away a lot. I had to go to, it's in Minnesota, Rochester, Minnesota, and I had to go up there at least twice a month. And also had to go, we had a formulation company we were partners with. That was set up before me, which was a mistake. They shouldn't have set that up. And I had dealings with that. It didn't work out for me.
Okay. Then you came back. A couple
Yeah.
other things. We'll skip past that. But then you started to form dental offices.
What I did is I got Wall Street backing. I went to Wall Street. They gave me $30 million. And which was not bad. I didn't want any more, because it diluted my ownership. And but 30 was all right. And I started buying some offices, and I had in physics there's a term called significant mass, and that's when you add something that influences the behavior of the whole. So I got enough offices to start it off with the money. I returned about 20 million of it, and I could have returned the other, but my partners wouldn't let. The partners who invested, some of the partners who invested in me wouldn't let me because they saw it was going good. They didn't want to be bought out, and so we just kept going on, and then in '07 we had a depression, and a couple of them. These were like decent enough sized investment houses, but they were strapped for money. And it was 10 years we were in business, and we were doing better and better every year. And they said, and our agreement was either you buy us out or we buy you out. Well, I didn't want to buy them out, and they didn't want, so we sold it.
But it was a good deal.
It was a good deal. Then I started to get into other things, and like I'm in something now.
Okay, so I want to get a little philosophical here.
Okay.
I mean, it's very interesting how all these experiences that you were forced into when you were young because of unfortunate circumstances.
Forced into it.
Yeah, unfortunate circumstances.
Yeah. Okay.
Shaped your thought processes and
Well, I'm sure.
turned out to be very beneficial
Yes.
as you were thinking through future businesses.
Yeah.
So you don't look back now and say, that's too bad that I had the life of those conditions. Are you grateful now that you had to go
I
through?
wouldn't say grateful. Certainly not grateful for that life. It was what it was. You couldn't change couldn't change everything, but what I could change, I did. And I think I had a very adventurous life. I thought it was terrific. I had hobbies in between all of this. I had horses, race horses. I mean, I thought that was, gee, this is terrific, that race horses. I thought it was great. I was able to coach Little League. I put Little League, listen, I put Little League in here with a lot of these other achievements.
Why did you do the racehorses? Was it part because it embodied a completely different life than you knew, or you just loved being around track and horses?
Okay, it's a good question. While I was at Cuneo Press, working nights, we had some breaks. We printed for the whole country, we printed the daily racing form. I wasn't alert enough, because it was the middle of the night, to study, but I could read the racing form. And I liked it. I liked reading the racing form because you tried to figure out the past experience of the horse, what his recent, win-loss ratio was, what tracks he were on, how fast he could run, who was he running against. It kept me amused then.
But there's no way in heck, when you were working those two jobs and...
I wasn't thinking of owning horses. I was just, but it left something in my mind.
Wouldn't it shock the hell out of the kid that was working that night shift that one day you'd own horses?
Oh yeah, that's unbelievable. No, I couldn't believe that. Look, I was thinking I'll be happy to get out of, I didn't think too far ahead then. I had to get out of school. And getting the money to get out of school, that was the struggle. That was a challenge. Nobody in my mother's side of the family had any money, really. And my father's family, the ones that were affluent, didn't recognize my father as being part of the family, and certainly didn't recognize us, my mother, my sister, and I. All right.
Is there any point in time where you returned to them as a success?
No. Oh, I did. I did. Some recognition would be because when I was buying, not only was I buying dental offices when I was consolidant, but I was also managing offices. People were coming to me and says, "Why don't you just manage us? Show us how to make money, and we'll pay you. Give us the number." People were coming to me. And I was also doing it with medical offices. And Pierce came to me and asked me to run his outpatient center and a couple of his labs. he was losing about $3 million a month. Now, it was terribly overbuilt and pretentious, and there were just costs in there that you shouldn't have had. So I couldn't get rid of those, but I did cut 70% of his losses.
Does this tie it back into your family?
Yes, I got it. I did the interviews of the doctors. You know, I felt that I could talk to them, and I got a physician who came. Could you stop for a second, Loretta?
No, it's okay.
What was that guy? What was the doctor's name? My relative. Come on in here.
We don't need the name.
Okay. Yeah, I
It's
don't.
okay, Mom. Go ahead.
Well,
He's
he was.
name, Mom. He's hunting for the name of the relative that came for the interview, unbeknownst to Dad. The doctor that was a relative.
Oh, that was related to him, yeah, and I went to school with the twins.
Okay, it doesn't matter. Go ahead.
Anyway,
Foreman.
Foreman.
It's Foreman.
Okay.
Foreman.
Foreman.
Anyway, I got this doctor in. He was from Philadelphia, went to Jefferson Medical School. He was 60 years old, and I liked him. And I mentioned it to your mother. And your mother said, "What's his name?" You know, she says, "You know, maybe you're related to him, because you know, a couple of the Lipschitz one of the Lipschitz girls had married a foreman." Yeah, that's true. You're right. Next visit. Well, of course, I had to get his resume checked out, and I found out he had some problems in Philadelphia. He told me he was from Philadelphia, went to Jefferson, and told me, you know, he left, came to here, Florida, and I found out he had a drug problem. He was a user in drugs.
Good thing we got his name. Okay.
And but found out, though, that we were related. His grandmother and my grandmother, Cecilia, who went to Canada, were sisters. His grandmother was my grandmother's youngest sister.
But like in the movies, you'd have this moment where you return to the family having made good, and they say, our long-lost relative.
No. Well, I had met some of them before, because unbeknownst to me, I'd taken out a girl, this girl, Foreman, who was one of a twin, a nice little attractive girl, and before I met your mother. And the first day we went out, and things had progressed. Hopefully for me, I liked her. And the second date I came to pick her up about 3 weeks later, there was a whole living room full of people there. And I thought maybe it was a part, but there was a sense, an aura of nervous energy in the room. And I'm thinking, what did she say about our first date that produced this kind of arena, an audience? And an older woman was sitting in the chair, and she got up and she said, "You're Larry Brody? Your mother's name is Anna?" "Yes." "Your father's name is Joseph?" She started crying. And she grabs me up and she says, "Your grandmother's my sister." Okay. So now I'm really, because I'm thinking real quick, this girl is a cousin. And sitting on the steps as a kid about 10 years old. And that's the man that came for a job.
The user.
Huh?
The user.
The user.
And but so at this point, again, I am looking for that redemption.
What redemption?
Where they say, "Oh,
No,
not like your
never have.
father, what a good boy."
Well,
Sorry.
in fact, after we both mutually decided, I tried to steer it so he would say, "No, I'm not going to take a position." So
No, with the family, not this.
yeah.
Not the user.
Well, so I said to him, "Do you have any family reunions?" And he said, "Well, yeah, we do." And I said, "Well, I'd like to meet some of my relatives." I said it to him. he said, well, let me get back to you on that. And that was it. I never followed up on it.
Curses. So,
I don't,
what do you
there's
think?
nobody left that remembers Joe Brody. I mean, they wouldn't remember Brody's. Look, I'm 86. I mean, who could be left? I was a little kid.
No, but at some point, you know, in
Yeah.
your 40s, your 50s,
Well, I wasn't in the 40s and 50s, you know. They didn't like it. They didn't like Brody's. And for that good reason not to.
so what do you think that it was that enabled you to overcome, let's say?
I had a lot of good luck. I did. And I was willing to work hard. I'm not going to say I didn't feel sorry for myself. That would be audacious. I think in everybody's life they say, poor me. Poor me. Why is this happening to me? I'm sure I said it. But I didn't dwell on it.
Is that a product of absorbing your mother's positivity?
Yes. And the other part was my father's be a man. My father never complained. Oh, that's not true. Scratch that. Scratch that. Scratch that. He did complain. Yeah, no, scratch that. But I never felt that he was intimidated by anything. But he didn't think his way out of anything. He was just going to push his way out of anything.
So there are people in life who, if they have, let's say, a father that they dislike,
Yes.
or a father that's abusive or treats them poorly, two paths. Either you make it cyclical and you become that person that you despise, or you go the completely opposite way. Was it a promise to yourself that you were going to be a completely different father?
Oh, sure.
What did you actually say to yourself?
Well, no, I just wasn't going to be like my father. I thought he was a failure. And I just felt he could have done better. He didn't always have to prove to the world or to whomever he was having some kind of stress relationship that he was going to, he was going to come out on top. Just do it. You don't have to.
So what lessons did he in fact teach you?
Well, it'd be tough. But
through his failures, he taught you a lot. What lessons?
not to let anybody intimidate me. Not to let anything intimidate me.
But he wasn't intimidated, and yet he was a failure.
Well, it's because he tried to use brute strength to push his way through things. I think through my mother gave me the example of you don't have to confront people right on. You can just say, well, that's one way of doing it. I don't know if you ever see me in action. I don't know. You don't see me confront too many people. Yeah. And then I had this, I don't know where I picked it up. When things really get tough with me in some kind of encounter, I just say, listen, it's been very nice speaking to you. And that was it. I didn't dwell on it. Hey, nothing's going to be accomplished here. I'm going to move on, you move on.
So there was one thing that I remember thinking, it happens a lot in life, that the parent works so hard because they're driven by their circumstance. This was something that I think even Dwayne Wade talked about, practiced every day because he had to get out of his situation, and he worries because his kids are in nice private schools and everything's handed to him. So what message, especially now that it's two generations, we had it good, now your grandchildren have it good. What messages do you need to impart to them?
I disguise a lot of my messages with stories. I told my grandchildren, I told my kids, you guys, stories. And the stories all had a moral basis to it. The heroine or heroes in those stories always were good people, worked hard, studied hard, were very smart, and always could figure something out. Do you remember those stories? So those stories, like, I felt that they kind of helped a little bit with talking to them. And I always encouraged my children and my grandchildren, you can do it. Do you ever remember me telling you that you couldn't do something? And could you, and you were able to do anything you wanted to do. And if it was, disappointing, we would figure out something that wouldn't be disappointing. It wasn't so hard. And you do the same thing with your kids. You have you have somewhat of a challenge with one, but other than that, you're winning. You're winning.
So that it's as simple as that then. It's as simple as you can do it.
Well, sometimes you have to show them a little bit. I was lucky I had kids and I have grandchildren who are amenable to suggestion. It's more suggestion.
So in all these experiences, what sort of, if you can reflect for a moment, what is really the message, the most important message? Is it family? Is it work? Is it having a combination?
Oh, no, well, family is important. Well, then you can do without family. But I admired my mother for some things, most things. I felt that she didn't have enough confidence in herself. And you know what choices she made. And I think that's about it.
No, we're good. No, I just wanted to check and make sure.
Yeah.
So family.
Well, family to me is really exceptionally important. And then you have to be willing, everything isn't for self-gain. If you look at my resume, you'll see I've done a lot of pro bono things. Everybody, I just happen to make money. I found it easy to make money.
And what I find interesting is usually they say you're successful when you follow a passion. You didn't necessarily follow a passion, so do you believe in that?
Oh, I think it's a big help. But the thing is, everything interested me. But I found I was very successful with people. I tried to help people. I really did. I mean, I tried to make a good person better. That was my philosophy. I want to make a good person better. And I would tell them when they come to work for me. I had hundreds of people that worked for me, maybe more. I always thought, listen, two things here. One, you want to make money, and I want to make you more valuable to yourself. Because that'll help me too. It'll help the company. And I always tried. But it was just, I felt that helped everybody. It wasn't.
So the philosophies that ruled your life, if you can, integrity, hard work.
Well, well, look, as virtuous as you try to be, you're not virtuous enough. I mean, we all have.
Hang on. Gunnar, we're 15 floors up. You're safe. Gunnar. Oh, I hear a dog barking. Okay, buddy. No. I can't talk right now.
Let me close the door.
Come here. Hey, come here, buddy. Come here. There's something making noise. Alright, hold on.
The dog's in there.
Weird dog. It's okay, buddy. It's okay.
You need a restroom?
No. Just because we lost our son right now.
Andrea, why don't you give me a cracker or something?
He's stuck on the rug again.
Actually, I had a lot of good luck. I did. I had some bad luck, but I had a lot of good luck. I could have been drafted. A lot of those guys that went over there never came back.
Sometimes it is as simple as that.
Oh yeah. Well, I believe in that. Then you didn't have I didn't have as much competition. We lost 500,000 men in World War II, and they were like 5 years older than I. You know, I wasn't that age group that went to World War II.
Okay.
Go ahead.
All right, so we're talking about like the guiding principles. Integrity, hard work, being good to people.
The integrity is almost self-survival. You don't get anywhere in this world if you're lying and cheating. I just did what was right. You know, what was fair. You want to call that integrity? Integrity is a nicer word. But I was fair. I felt I could, I didn't have to take advantage of anybody. Right? You don't take advantage of anybody, do you? No. Good.
Okay, I really would be remiss. Do you have time? How much time do you have? I would be remiss. I really want to hear that Louis Bell story on tape.
When
This goes down in
when we permanently moved to Philadelphia, and we didn't, you know, have these sojourns to Bridgeton, New Jersey, and back to my grandmother's house, and then back to New Jersey, and now my father is out of the service, and we have a small little apartment, and I'm going to school, Sartain Elementary School, and you lined up alphabetically, and there was an Armstrong, and there was somebody, and then there was Bell, Louis Bell, and then there was Brody. And Louis Bell was the kind of kid that never had matching socks. That he would even come to school with his pants backwards. There was that even as a child, I thought there was something wrong with him. He would like yell out answers in class. And when the teacher would leave the room, which something they would put we always had like a proctor, usually some girl who was very good and a good student. And people would just, most of the kids would just sit there, but Louis would jump on the desk and jump from one desk to another. And one day, I just couldn't take it anymore. And I hurt Louis a little bit, because he was always annoying me, and I didn't want him to annoy me anymore. And he went to the blackboard and got the erasers and chalked them all up and threw them at me. And of course, he threw them from the front of the room because, you know, it was safer for him. And one went into we had these chandeliers. They were just like a white cup, big white hemisphere, and had bulbs in it, and one got into that. And the teacher came in, and sure enough, everybody's looking at that, wondering what's going to happen with the chandelier. And it started, the board erasers started smoking, the alarms went off, and people said, it's Larry's fault, because I had assaulted Louis. And it wasn't Louis' fault that he threw the board eraser at me, and then he threw it too high. It got into the chandelier.
So what happened to you?
Nothing. I explained what happened.
And did Louis Bell get in trouble?
Yes, Louis Bell got in trouble.
What became of Louis Bell?
I don't know, but when I was in dental school, I met this guy. We called him the Lamar of the laboratory. Dentists have laboratories that you do a lot of work in. And this guy, Lamar of the laboratories, Lamar Bell, spent hours and hours. And when he finished what he was doing, it looked like an awful mess. He really never practiced dentistry on his own. He ended up being a prison dentist, working for he couldn't get any other job. And I found out Lamar Bell was Louis Bell's older brother. And that Louis Bell never finished high school. And he grew up and he became a teamster. He drove a truck. And that's what he became. He's just a truck driver.
All right, so last and final question, hopefully. So here you are now, what, 86?
I'll be 86.
Okay, 86. And, I mean, you could go use your pool every day, go on walks, play tennis, do whatever you want, but you're still working. Why are you still working?
I like it. Because I have good people that I meet once a week. I speak to them twice a week. And we're doing something that could be very important in healthcare.
Why, but still, you know?
I mean, really important.
You just handed me a resume that's got 30 things on it. Why not just, you know, enjoy?
Because this is not work. Work is something you'd rather not do. That's my definition, always. Didn't I ever tell you my definition of work? No, work is something I'd rather not do. And so I want to do this. I like to do it. It could be something amazing. Good for people. You know, you get to be my age, you want to do something that's really good for people. This could be very good for people.
So can I ask a question and see if this is fair? In the beginning, you were fueled by wanting money.
Surviving,
wanting money.
well,
What
surviving and having a better life.
So what,
The-
at a
the
certain
money-
point when you
the
achieved
money.
that,
Yeah.
what began to fuel you?
Challenge.
So do you think if you had been born into different circumstances where you were privileged, that you wouldn't have done any of these things?
I never think like that. What if is like not in my vocabulary. That to me that's
I guess the question is it in your DNA? Do you feel that this is something that's just within your DNA?
I think it is. I do think though, I believe in genetics. I do think that my father's mother's people gave me the best round of DNA because they were all brilliant people.
But when I listen to hear your story, I hear so much of your success that can be attributed to your mother, believe it or not.
Oh yeah, sure.
The energy level,
Yeah.
and the ability to
But
work with people.
But you have to have the DNA too. I think, you know, sometimes I used to wonder. I said, well, how do I have that idea, and how come it goes on? But then I discovered that my great grandfather was from the 10 generations of philosophic rabbis. They were right not to have anything to do with us. I mean, they were very bright, and there were some bright people on on both the Gordon side and the Udashevsky side. Although I don't know what their real name was. They just took the Count's name. So the DNA was there, and my father was just, tortured, to childhood. I mean, but it took me.
Did he ever acknowledge your success? Did he ever give you,
Yeah.
hey, you did okay?
Oh yeah.
Did
Oh
he
sure.
ever think you were man enough? Did he ever?
When?
After when you were older, and here you have you built your family, you built the life, at that point, did you get, I guess what I'm saying, did you ever feel you finally got the approval?
Oh yeah, I felt that.
Is that a good thing?
Yeah, I was satisfied with it. Yeah, he was, like your mother knows. I mean, I spent an awful lot of time hating him. A lot of energy hating him. So that's kind of a, so why would I spend all that time hating? He's gone, that's it. But why am I still thinking that he was such a son of a bitch, And why, and hating him? I mean, so he did have a big influence on me. If I could spend all this negative energy thinking about them, that had to be provoked by something.
But didn't it also propel you to prove them wrong?
Oh, I kind of think that vanished a long time ago.
I think not, but okay. All right. So last but not least, if you wanted to send a message to the grandchildren.
Well, I have to say this. I'm very proud of my own children. I think that they turned out terrific. I mean, really. They were the kind of people I would have liked to have been friends with if they'd let me, when I was growing up. And then, lo and behold, every grandchild is special. So I'm thinking, is that because of, old age says that? No. So they did a good job with their kids, or they're doing a good job with their kids. But every grandchild, you look at them. I mean, what do you think? I mean, they've had it easier than even their parents, but I think that they've done terrific. So, what?
You don't need a message then, huh?
No, don't need a message. No, I'm very proud of you. This is off the record.
All right, and then don't say it. All right, we're done.